The midday heat crushed down on Oshodi market like an iron fist pressing against flesh and bone. Adaeze Okonkwo unfolded her worn tarp across the dusty ground, arranging with meticulous care her wax print fabrics in their brilliant patterns: electric blues, solar yellows, blood reds. All around her, Lagos roared its existence into being. Fish vendors shouting their prices through the thick air, women haggling in Yoruba with voices that carried generations of negotiation, barefoot children weaving between stalls like water, finding its path. The mingled scent of gasoline, grilled suya and overripe fruit hung heavy in the saturated atmosphere. Her fingertips traced the edge of one particularly beautiful wrapper, her thoughts drifting to cheek. Her younger brother had reached 16 now. The school fees for next term weighed on her heart like stone, pressing down on her chest. Just 2 more sales today, and I'll have enough. She lifted her head, ready to welcome customers. That's when the purr of powerful engines tore through the market's atmosphere. 3 black Mercedes, followed by a white Rolls-Royce Phantom, invaded the narrow street, forcing pedestrians to flatten themselves against walls. The horns blared, imperious, contemptuous. Adaeze froze in place. Everyone recognized those vehicles. The Phantom, Obinna Nwachukwu, the wealthiest and most enigmatic man in all of Lagos. The Rolls came to rest 3 meters from her stall. The door swung open. A man emerged, tall, imposing, wearing a pearl grey 3-piece suit that must have cost more than everything she owned combined. Dark glasses despite the shade, gold watch catching light like a warning. Behind him, 4 bodyguards with squared shoulders scanned the crowd with glacial eyes. Obinna Nwachukwu moved as though the ground belonged to him, which it probably did. "Clear the path," one guard barked. Before Adaeze could react, a brutal hand seized her arm and yanked her violently aside. She stumbled, fell to her knees, her wax fabrics, so carefully folded, scattered into mud and dust. A boot trampled the blue wrapper, the one she'd set aside for cheek. Breathless with rage more than pain, Adaeze looked up. The billionaire continued his march, imperturbable, as if she didn't exist, as if she were merely an insignificant obstacle. Around her, the crowd had fallen silent. Some lowered their eyes, resigned. Others murmured, but nobody dared intervene. Something exploded inside her. "Hey!" Her voice cracked through the silence. "You!" Obinna stopped, turned slowly. Behind the dark glasses, impossible to read his expression. Adaeze rose to her feet, trembling with fury, clutching the soiled fabric in her hands. "You think your money gives you the right to walk over people?" A guard stepped forward, threatening, but Obinna raised his hand to stop him. "Who are you?" His voice was deep, almost weary. "A heartless phantom who's forgotten where he came from." Adaeze spat. "A rich man who no longer sees the poor because they're too far beneath your gaze." Something flickered across Obinna's face, an imperceptible tightening of the jaw. "Look!" She brandished the destroyed fabric. "This was for my brother, so he could continue school, but what does that matter to you?" The silence was total now. Even the flies seemed to hold their flight. Adaeze felt tears of rage burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Never in front of him. Instead, she did what her grandmother had taught her before dying. She raised her right hand, fingers spread, and spoke the words in Igbo. "Nti giga eto rue magbe imutara, igenti nahuhu ndi ozo." May your ears grow until you learn to hear the suffering of others. The words resonated like divine judgment. Mama Ngozi, the palm oil seller, brought her hand to her mouth. In Igbo culture, you didn't cast a curse lightly. This was calling upon the ancestors themselves. Obinna slowly removed his glasses. For the first time, Adaeze saw his eyes, black, deep, and troubled, as if haunted by something she couldn't understand. He stared at her for so long that she felt her heart beating against her ribs. Then, without a word, he replaced his glasses and returned to his vehicle. The doors slammed shut. The convoy departed, leaving behind a cloud of red dust and oppressive silence. Adaeze gathered her fabrics with trembling hands. Nobody helped her. "You didn't touch someone who just cast a curse." Even Mama Ngozi kept her distance, her gaze filled with pity and fear. That evening, in the tiny room she shared with Chike and Ajagunle, Adaeze washed her face in a basin of lukewarm water. Her reflection danced in the cracked mirror hanging on the wall. She touched her ears absently. A strange sensation coursed through her, like tingling, a dull heat. "It's just exhaustion," she told herself as she slipped under the thin sheet. But something deep inside her knew that wasn't true. That night, Adaeze woke with a start, hands pressed against her ears. They had grown. This was no longer her imagination. The mirror didn't lie. Adaeze ran her trembling fingers over her ears. They had grown, not enormously, but enough that the change was undeniable. The lobes hung slightly lower. The outer ears had widened. Her heart hammered in her chest. "No, no, no, this can't be happening." "Ada!" Cheek's sleepy voice made her jump. Her brother sat up on his mat, frowning. "What's going on? It's barely 5 o'clock." She turned away quickly, searching for her Jeel head wrap. Her clumsy hands knotted the orange fabric around her head, concealing her ears beneath elaborate folds. In the mirror, her face looked drawn, her eyes reddened by sleeplessness. "Ada, look at me." Cheek stood, crossed the tiny room in 3 strides. He was almost as tall as her now, with the same high cheekbones, the same determined gaze. "Show me." "It's nothing." "Show me." She slowly lowered the head wrap. Cheek's eyes widened, his hand instinctively rising to his mouth. For one terrible instant, Adaeze thought he would laugh or recoil in disgust, but instead he placed his hands on her shoulders. "We'll find a solution, together." The tears she'd been holding since yesterday finally broke free. Returning to Oshodi Market was an ordeal. The first looks were ones of pity. Then came the whispers. Then the phones raised, videos filmed in secret. Adaeze tried to sell her fabrics, head wrapped in her Jeel, but the fabric slipped, revealing her deformed ears in glimpses. "Hey, that's her! The girl who cursed the phantom! Look at her ears! Like an elephant!" Laughter erupted, cruel as blades. A group of teenagers approached, phones brandished. "Auntie Elephant Ears! Smile for TikTok!" Adaeze clenched her teeth, kept her eyes fixed on her fabrics. "Ignore them. They'll leave eventually." But they didn't leave. Within hours, the videos exploded across Nigerian social media. Hashtag Oshodi Curse, hashtag Elephant Ears Girl. Thousands of views, shares, mocking comments. Her face, her ears, her shame exposed to all of Lagos. Customers turned away. Who would want to buy from the cursed woman? You didn't joke about these things. The curse could be contagious. Only Mama Ngozi, the old palm oil seller whose stall adjoined hers, dared approach. She placed a wrinkled hand on Adaeze's arm. "My child, go home today. Let the storm pass." "I can't, Mama. I need to sell." "Not in this state. They'll devour you alive." As if to confirm her words, a familiar voice rose behind her. "Adaeze, is that really you?" She turned around. Tunde, her former suitor, the one who'd promised marriage 2 years ago before disappearing when she had nothing left to offer as dowry. He stood there, arms crossed, mocking smile on his lips. "So it's true what they're saying? You insulted the billionaire and now—" He burst out laughing. "Thank God I escaped that. Imagine if I'd married you." Something broke inside her. Adaeze gathered her fabrics with an abrupt gesture, stuffed them in her bag, and left without a word. Tunde's laughter pursued her all the way to the market exit. Ajagunle had never seemed so small, so suffocating. The neighborhood was waking in its vibrant poverty. Women pounding cassava in large wooden mortars, barefoot children running between tin-roofed houses, men repairing motorcycles in front of makeshift workshops. The muddy alleys snaked between dwellings pressed against one another, as if seeking warmth. In the distance, beyond the rusted roofs, you could glimpse the glass towers of Victoria Island. So close yet, from another world. Adaeze looked away. In their room, Chike waited sitting on his mat, school uniform folded beside him. "Ada, the school sent a message. If we don't pay by Friday, I'll be expelled." She sat heavily on the cement floor. "Friday? In 3 days. and she hadn't sold a single fabric in a week. I'll find a solution. How? Nobody wants to come near you anymore. He was right. The rumor had spread to Adaeze too. Neighbors changed sidewalks when they saw her. Children pointed at her. Even the women who'd pounded cassava together for years turned their backs. The sun was declining, tinting the sky pink and orange when a black Mercedes stopped in front of their house. Conversations ceased instantly. Doors cracked open, faces pressed against windows. Obinna Nwachukwu stepped out of the car, alone. No bodyguards, no dark glasses. Just a man in a white shirt and black trousers who seemed almost ordinary in this setting of tin and mud, except nothing about him was ordinary. He planted himself in front of Adaeze's door. Their gazes met through the doorway. The billionaire's eyes were no longer cold. They were tormented. "I have a proposition for you." Ajagunle's silence was deafening. Adaeze felt all eyes weighing on her, curious, terrified, envious. Chike slipped behind her, protective despite his youth. "Come live in my residence for 3 months. I'll find a way to break this curse. And in exchange, nothing." He paused. "Just your presence." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was immense. Adaeze looked at her brother, their miserable room, the unpaid bills scattered on the crate that served as their table. Then she looked at the man who'd triggered her misfortune. 3 months in his golden prison for a chance to become invisible again, to become human again. She had no choice left. "I accept," she murmured, fists clenched. The iron gate opened onto another world. Adaeze descended from the Mercedes, her worn canvas bag pressed against her chest, and stood frozen before the Ikoyi villa. 3 stories of glass and white stone, infinity pool shimmering under the afternoon sun, tropical garden where red hibiscus exploded between palm trees. On the terrace, modern Yoruba sculptures stood alongside designer furniture. The pool water was cleaner than what she drank in Ajagunle. "This way, miss." A servant in immaculate uniform guided her inside. The other staff, cook, gardener, housemaids, stopped to stare at her. Their gazes slid over her Jeel headwrap, deformed by her hidden ears, over her dusty sandals, leaving traces on the immaculate marble. "Intruder," their eyes said. Morbid curiosity. The room assigned to her was larger than her entire Ajagunle house. King-size bed, draped in white linen, marble bathroom with a tub vast enough to drown in, panoramic window overlooking Lagos, the real Lagos of the rich, not that of the poor. Adaeze sat on the bed's edge, unable to touch anything, terrified of soiling this perfection. She thought of Chike, sleeping tonight on his mat in their tin room. Guilt knotted her throat. The following days unfolded in a grotesque parade. First, the doctors, 3 specialists in white coats who examined her ears from every angle, took measurements, shook their heads with perplexed expressions. No medical explanation. Then came the marabouts. An old man in white boo-boo traced symbols on the floor with chalk, burned incense that stung Adaeze's eyes. He chanted in Yoruba for an hour. Nothing changed. Next, a traditional healer with piercing eyes. She prepared a bath of bitter leaves, made Adaeze drink a decoction that tasted of earth and regret. The curse is powerful. It comes from the heart. Each attempt failed. Each morning, before the mirror, Adaeze observed that her ears had grown again, imperceptibly, but inexorably. Obinna attended each session, jaw clenched, gaze increasingly dark. He spoke little, gave brief orders, disappeared into his office for hours. The 3rd night, Adaeze still wasn't sleeping. The villa's silence was oppressive, so different from Ajagunle's living noise. Barking dogs, rumbling generators, neighbors arguing. Here, nothing, just cold, mute luxury. She put on a bathrobe found in the wardrobe and went exploring. Her bare feet slid across cool marble. The house slept, plunged in golden penumbra, light filtered beneath a half-open door. Obinna's office. She approached soundlessly, pushed the door gently. He was there, his back turned, motionless before the massive ebony desk. In his hands, a photograph yellowed by time. Adaeze entered. "You're not sleeping either." He barely startled, as if expecting her presence, turned slowly. His eyes were reddened, from fatigue or tears, impossible to tell. "I rarely sleep." She approached, saw the photo he held. A thin woman dressed in a faded wrapper, standing before a miserable market stall. Tomatoes piled in wicker baskets. Her face bore that particular dignity of the poor who refuse to bow their heads. "My mother," he said simply. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words. "She died selling tomatoes in Oshodi." His voice broke slightly. "Exactly where I met you." Adaeze felt something shift in her chest. She looked at the man before her, no longer the arrogant billionaire, but a son contemplating his mother's ghost. "That's why I ignored you." "Yes." He replaced the photo with infinite delicacy. "Because seeing you there, in her place, selling the same fabric she sold, it was unbearable. So you acted as if I didn't exist." "I changed my name. Obinna Okonkwo died in those streets. I built an empire on forgetting." He finally looked at her. "And you forced me to remember." Adaeze crossed her arms, troubled by the vulnerability she perceived. "You destroyed me to protect your lie?" "No." He took a step closer. "I destroyed you because I forgot who I was." The silence fell again, but different this time, charged with nascent understanding, with a connection neither wanted to name. Obinna's eyes sought Adaeze's, and for the first time, she didn't see coldness there, but a pain twin to her own. "You cursed me," he murmured, "but perhaps you saved me." Adaeze instinctively brought her hand to her neck, where rested the pendant she never removed, that small bronze cross the dying woman had entrusted to her at the orphanage 16 years ago. Obinna suddenly paled, his gaze fixed on the jewelry, as if he'd just seen a ghost. "Where?" His voice trembled like never before. "Where did you get that? Answer me!" Obinna's voice shook. "Where did you get that pendant?" Adaeze stepped back instinctively, her hand clutching the bronze cross. "At the orphanage. I was 12 years old." "Which orphanage? When?" "The one in Surulere, 16 years ago." She hesitated, troubled by the intensity of his gaze. "A dying woman came, thin, sick. She gave me this saying, 'Give it to your brother when he's grown. Tell him his mother never stopped loving him.'" Obinna staggered, gripped the desk. His lips moved without any sound emerging. "Describe her." She had deep black eyes, a scar on her right temple. She whispered a name before leaving. "Obinna." He collapsed into the chair, head in hands. A raw sob escaped him, a terrible sound like a wounded animal. "That pendant belonged to my mother." Each word tore at his throat. "She gave it to me when I was 7. I lost it in the street after her disappearance." Silence fell like a stone into a well's depths. Adaeze couldn't finish the sentence. Her mind refused to understand what her heart already knew. "Your brother." He finally raised his eyes to her, face ravaged. "I'm your older brother." Adaeze's world tilted. Memories flooded in, chaotic. The dying woman gripping her hand. "I had a first son. I lost him in the streets. Forgive me, my baby." The nights she cradled the pendant, imagining that disappeared older brother. Chike asking, "Do you think he's searching for us somewhere?" And now he was here, the arrogant billionaire, the man who'd humiliated her, her own blood. "I didn't know," Obinna stammered. "After her death, I survived alone. I stole, begged, lied. I erased everything connecting me to her, changed my name, destroyed the photos." He stood, approached. "I cursed you when you're my sister." Adaeze felt her legs give way. She fell to her knees, the pendant pressed against her heart. "You abandoned us. Mama searched for you until her last breath. I didn't know she was still alive." He knelt before her. "When I returned to Oshodi with money, years later, nobody knew her. I thought she was dead. She died thinking you'd forgotten her." Tears rolled down Obinna's cheeks. For the first time since she'd known him, Adaeze saw the man behind the mask. The abandoned child, the broken survivor. He extended his arms. She hesitated, then threw herself into them. They wept together, for their mother, for the lost years, for the fraternal embrace that destiny had stolen from them. "Forgive me," he murmured into her hair. "She never forgot you," she replied. The night garden perfumed with jasmine. Adaeze and Obinna walked beneath the mango trees, their shadows intertwined by moonlight. He told her everything, the hunger gnawing at his belly, nights under bridges, the businessman who'd given him his chance in exchange for dirty services. "I became rich by becoming someone else, a phantom without a past. I found my strength in poverty," she said softly, "because I knew Chike counted on me." He stopped, tenderly wiped the tears still rolling down her cheeks. "I'll never leave you alone again. Not you, nor Chike." She took his hand. "You really came back. Thanks to your curse." They sat on a stone bench. The silence was no longer heavy, but soothing. A sacred bond was weaving between them, that of rediscovered blood, of rebuilt family. "There's something else you need to know." Obinna's tone had changed, darker. "My associates, Chief Emeka Okafor and the others. They have a project for Ajagunle." Adaeze stiffened. "What kind of project?" "They want to demolish the neighborhood, build a luxury complex, hotels, upscale residences." He clenched his fists. "I signed the document 6 months ago before meeting you." She leaped to her feet. "What? I didn't know it was your neighborhood. I didn't know that." He fell silent, overwhelmed by the weight of his choices. "When?" "The bulldozers arrive tomorrow." Adaeze felt rage and fear explode within her. Mama Ngozi, the women pounding cassava, the barefoot children, Chike. "I can cancel the operation," Obinna said quickly. "I just need time." "There's no more time!" She headed toward the house. "I'm going back to Ajagunle. You can't do anything alone. They're my people." She turned around, eyes bright with determination. "They're my family too. I can't abandon them. You're safe here. I don't need safety. I need to fight." The next morning, the bulldozers arrived at Ajagunle. Adaeze looked at Obinna one last time from the villa's threshold. He wanted to hold her back. She saw it in his eyes, but he also understood. She put on her finest Jeel head wrap, bright orange like a war cry. Her giant ears deformed the fabric, visible to all. She no longer hid them. "Let me go," she said firmly. "This is my fight now." The yellow bulldozers were already roaring when Adaeze arrived at Ajagunle. She stepped out of the taxi, blazing orange Jeel head wrap, giant ears visible beneath the fabric. The neighbors who'd avoided her for weeks stopped dead. Mama Ngozi was first to approach. "My child, you've returned. I couldn't stay there while they destroy our home." Chike emerged from the crowd, hugged his sister tight. "Ada, we didn't know what to do." Adaeze looked at the machines advancing slowly toward the first tin houses. Men in white hard hats distributed orders. The police were there, batons in hand. "We fight," she said simply. The word passed from mouth to mouth. Within minutes, a human chain formed before the bulldozers. Women with babies on their backs, men with calloused hands, children firmly gripping their parents' legs. Adaeze positioned herself at the center, Mama Ngozi to her right, Chike to her left. "We will not move," she cried. The black Mercedes cut through the crowd. Chief Emeka Okafor descended, corpulent man in three-piece suit, massive gold signet ring, carnivorous smile. Behind him, a dozen armed police officers. "Who dares block my construction?" He advanced, spotted Adaeze. His smile widened, cruel. "Ah, the girl with elephant ears." He spat on the ground. "You're just a poor girl with monster ears. Nobody will listen to you." Adaeze took a step forward. Her heart raced, but her voice was firm. "I'm a woman who's no longer afraid of you." The murmurs ceased. All eyes converged on her. "You think your money gives you the right to crush everything?" she continued. "These houses may be tin, but they're our homes. These alleys are muddy, but that's where we learn to walk." Chief Emeka signaled the police. "Arrest this mad woman." But phones had risen. Local journalists were filming. Social media was already broadcasting live. #Ajagunle resists. Adaeze climbed onto a crate, dominating the crowd. Her voice carried, clear and powerful. "You can destroy our houses, but not our dignity. We're the invisible ones Lagos forgot, but we exist. We have names, stories, dreams. Adaeze! Adaeze! The crowd chanted her name. Chief Emeka turned scarlet. Disperse them! By force if necessary! The police advanced, batons raised. A voice thundered through a megaphone. Stop! Everyone turned. Obinna Nwachukwu emerged from his car, dressed simply, jeans and white shirt. No bodyguards, no dark glasses. Just a man walking toward his past. He positioned himself between Adaeze and Chief Emeka, facing cameras from around the world. My name is Obinna Okonkwo. His voice trembled slightly. Son of a tomato seller who died in Oshodi. The silence was total. All of Lagos held its breath before their screens. I grew up in these streets you want to destroy. I begged in these alleys. I survived thanks to these people's solidarity. He gestured toward the crowd. Then I became ashamed. I changed my name. I built a fortune on forgetting. Chief Emeka blanched. Obinna, have you gone mad? Think about our contracts. I'm thinking about my soul. He extended his hand toward Adaeze. She took it, trembling. This is my sister. This is my truth. Cameras crackled. Smartphones recorded. History was rewriting itself live. I publicly denounce Chief Emeka Okafor and his associates for corruption, land spoliation, and violence. Obinna brandished documents. Here's the proof of your crimes. Chief Emeka screamed, You're finished. Nobody will work with you anymore. Perhaps. Obinna smiled, a smile free for the first time. But I can finally look at myself in a mirror. He squeezed Adaeze's hand tighter. I'm announcing the creation of the Mother Okonkwo Foundation, complete reconstruction of Ajegunle, schools, clinics, dignified housing. The crowd exploded in cheers. Adaeze felt something strange on her head. She brought her hand to her ears. They were shrinking, slowly but visibly. The curse was breaking, not through magic, but through true listening, through redemption, through rediscovered love. Chief Emeka, humiliated, isolated, backed toward his car under jeers. The police lowered their weapons, uncertain. Obinna and Adaeze looked at each other. Tears flowed down their cheeks. We're together now, he murmured. Forever, she replied. 6 months later, Adaeze stood before a mirror. Her ears had returned to normal size, but she still wore her gel head wraps, now from pride, not shame. 6 months had been enough to transform Ajegunle. Adaeze walked through the metamorphosed streets, heart swelling with pride she'd never thought possible. The tin houses had given way to solid dwellings in vibrant colors, yellow, turquoise, orange. The brand new primary school displayed solar panels on its roof, and children played in a concrete courtyard with real swings. The free community clinic, inaugurated 3 months ago, offered dignified care. No more dying for lack of money. The covered market now protected vendors from rain and sun, with clean wooden stalls and constant electricity. On the walls, giant murals told the neighborhood story. Women pounding cassava, laughing children, the resistance against bulldozers. One fresco depicted a woman with giant ears raising a victorious fist. Adaeze stopped before the cooperative building. Ajegunle weavers, pride of Africa, announced the sign. Inside, 20 women worked on modern looms, creating wax print wrappers exported as far as Senegal, Ghana, Ivory Coast. Her own enterprise, her dream become reality. Ada! Mama Ngozi waved from the counter. A new contract from Benin. Adaeze smiled. The old palm oil seller was now co-manager, living guardian of the neighborhood's memory. The University of Lagos swarmed with students when Adaeze came to collect Chike. He emerged from the lecture hall, satchel on shoulder, surrounded by classmates discussing animatedly. First in his law class, her little brother who would defend the voiceless, who would carry their story before tribunals. The bronze pendant gleamed at his neck. Ready for the cemetery? He asked gently. Ready. The Ikoyi villa had become more modest. Obinna welcomed them in jeans and simple shirt. No more three-piece suits. No more ostentatious gold watch. He visited Ajagunle each week, trained young entrepreneurs from the streets, offered them what he'd never been given, a chance without lies. "The phantom is dead," he declared during an interview. "The man is born." The major associates had abandoned him. High society circles turned their backs, but each evening he finally slept in peace. "Let's go," he said simply. The public cemetery extended at Lagos's periphery, far from the rich's marble mausoleums. Here, modest graves pressed against one another, marked with painted wooden crosses. Their mothers was simple. Mother Okonkwo, tomato seller, dignified woman. Adaeze, Obinna, and Chike stood before the stone, a young mango tree in a bag between them. Together, they dug the red earth, planted the tree that would grow in the shade of her memory. "She would be proud," Adaeze murmured, wiping her earthy hands. "You finally learned to listen." Obinna looked at his hands that had stolen, that had built an empire on forgetting, that now planted a tree in homage. "You taught me, with your words and your curse." Chika placed a hand on each shoulder. "And now, we're truly a family." They remained silent a long moment, three orphans reunited by pain and redemption. Above them, a flight of birds crossed the sky, black eagles with spread wings, symbols of reclaimed freedom. The television news broadcast the images. Ichife Meka Okafor, sentenced to 15 years in prison for corruption, land spoliation and violence. Ajagunle lands restored to their inhabitants, a historic victory for Lagos's marginalized communities. Adaeze turned off the television. Justice had been served. Oshodi Market hadn't changed. The same cries, the same smells, the same teeming life. But Adaeze returned different. She was no longer alone with her worn tarp. 10 employees from her cooperative accompanied her, selling quality fabrics under a common banner. Her ears had returned to normal size long ago, yet she still wore her orange jewel head wrap, no longer to hide, but from pride, from choice. A barefoot child approached timidly, staring at the fabrics in brilliant patterns. "It's beautiful," he murmured. Adaeze knelt to his height, recognized in his eyes the hunger she'd known. "What's your name?" "Emmanuel." She handed him a small blue wrapper. "Here, for your first day of school." I can't pay. It's a gift." She gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "Never be ashamed of who you are, Emmanuel, where you come from, because that's what will make you strong." The child pressed the fabric against him, eyes bright with tears and hope. Adaeze stood, looked around her. Mama Ngozi selling her fabrics with dignity. Chiki studying to become a lawyer. Obinna rebuilding what he'd destroyed. And herself, standing in this market where everything had begun. The Lagos sun flooded the stalls with golden light. In the streets of Lagos where poverty screams and where wealth becomes deaf, Adaeze had understood what so many forget. Our ears truly grow only when our hearts finally accept to hear. And sometimes you must be cursed to rediscover your blessing, because the curse wasn't in her giant ears, but in the silence of those who refuse to hear the suffering of their own. Sometimes the curses we dread most are actually disguised blessings that force us to confront our deepest truths. Adaeze's story reminds us that dignity isn't measured by the size of our ears, but by the greatness of our hearts, and that true listening begins when we stop fleeing who we truly are. In a world where the rich become deaf and the poor invisible, it's our shared humanity that breaks all curses. What city are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from right now. We absolutely love knowing where our amazing community is from.